Marc Mitscher was a U.S. admiral during World War II. And similar to the other admirals in the Pacific, he received relatively little attention during the war or even after it. Mitscher was an aircraft guy. He commanded the aircraft carrier Hornet and delivered Jimmy Doolittle and his planes to, within fairly close range of Japan. The Hornet participated in the Battle of Midway, but I'm going to discuss Midway a little bit later in this. Subsequently, Mitscher commanded air operations in the Battle of Guadalcanal, and he became commander of a thing called the Fast Carrier Task Force. And the Fast Carrier Task Force seems to have participated in, it seems like every major battle in the Pacific in World War II. The Fast Carrier Task Force was like an American Death Star. It comprised 18 different carriers, and they were subdivided into 3 or 4 mini task forces. So Mitscher was able to split up the Fast Carrier Task Force and attack Japanese bases simultaneously all over the Pacific. It was called fast because the carriers and the battleships that accompanied them were able to sail at better than 30 knots. What had happened was that the Navy had changed its organization, changed its battle doctrine, and re-equipped itself with new ships, new airplanes, and Mitscher was the perfect guy to exploit the capabilities of these ships and airplanes. Now let me get back to the Battle of Midway. What had happened was that the group of airplanes that took off from the Hornet went in the wrong direction. They sailed due west, and the Japanese fleet was actually in the southwest. All of that flight completely missed the Japanese, except for a torpedo bomber squadron that was led by a man named Waldron. So the issue was who decided on the angle of attack that they were going to take when they left the Hornet. The question comes down to whether it was Mitscher or whether it was a man named Stanhope Ring, who was the commander of that air group. There was a lot of controversy about it. And the controversy really escalated when it turned out that there was only one after-action report that was filed, and that was by Mitscher himself, and it was 9 days after the Battle of Midway. And that was kind of contrary to Navy procedures, which required the different command levels in the attack to file individual after-action reports. Now, some people explain it this way by saying that at the start of the Battle of Midway, the high command for the Navy in the Pacific thought that they were looking at 2 carrier task forces, each with 2 aircraft carriers. And instead, of course, the Japanese were going with 1 with 4 carriers. And conceivably, I mean, the explanation is that Mitscher and Ring were looking for the 2 carriers that they didn't think had been spotted yet, and consequently they went off in that direction. Unfortunately, Mitscher's after-action report doesn't say that. You don't really know what happened. You don't know who decided on the direction that they were going. So it's hard at this distance, 80 years later, to figure out exactly what was going on. The thing about it, I think, is that a mistake was made, and Mitscher, as the commander of the Hornet, is responsible for that mistake. But that mistake does not in any way minimize the success that he had later in the war. And he really was, to my mind, an absolutely outstanding commander. So that's my take on it. I mean, there's a lot of controversy about his performance at Midway. I tend to overlook it. Okay, he made a mistake, but boy, he really knew how to exploit the capabilities of that fast carrier task force.